In today's episode, I get a chance to interview the incredible Liz Melville, and she is a Facebook ads expert. She has a course. She is a coach in James Wedmore's Business by Design. She is amazing, and she's Scottish, and she does so much work across the pond. All of her clients, as she shared in the episode, are US based, except for one new one that she has. So she gets it done, and she doesn't even live in the US. And I love her so much. I know her well from my mastermind that I'm in. But I still learned a lot about her and her story, her backstory. She talks about living in a corporate world, doing a job for many, many years, climbing the corporate ladder like me, and having a child late in life, and then completely pivoting in her early 40s. And now she is the ads manager running ads campaign for multi-million dollar companies. So with no further ado, let's get right to the interview and you can meet Liz. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lives. And today I have with me Liz Melville. And I met Liz through a mastermind that I'm in, and she happens to be one of the coaches in the mastermind. So she is very valuable. She has such great experience, such great coaching help that she's been with for me and for our entire community. But she is a Facebook ads expert. And that was not what she always did. So we're going to get into that story. She's going to talk about how she transitioned into that career. And Liz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Laurie. I'm really excited to talk to you because I know you're doing amazing things in kind of just talking about transformations and how women have pivoted through their lives. So I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So, and, I am really interested, especially because you are in the corporate world like me, and you completely transitioned to the online space. And I don't even know if you knew anything about Facebook ads. And so I love to find out what was the mindset behind somebody at midlife who made this drastic decision to change everything. So let's just start there. Tell a little bit of your background and your story, kind of where you were when you decided to make a big change.
Yeah, sure. So I spent about 15 years in corporate life. And I suppose it's a typical story, isn't it? I was in corporate life, but I was on quite a fast track to success through that and climbing the ladder. And with it came the usual long hours, and I was doing a big commute every day and was, just heading towards burnout fast. But at the same time, towards the end of that kind of corporate career, I guess, I had met my husband and did that late in life. I was 35 when I met him, and we kind of got married and we wanted to start a family. And I knew that the stress I was under, this was just not going to happen. I mean, it didn't help that I was hardly ever at home with him anyway, with all the amount of working, so that doesn't help. But I just knew that something had to give. And I had been off work with burnout, exhaustion, and I just thought, no, I can't do this. So there was an actual corporate restructure happened, and redundancy came along, and I actually asked my manager to please just write me out of this business. I want out the structure. I want to go.
And what did you do? What was exactly the job that you did?
I was I started out, I was a sales manager for an assurance company, so selling pensions, things like that. Really exciting stuff, pensions, investments, all that kind of thing. And then I was poacher turned gamekeeper, so I actually moved into the back office and started working on sales processes and sales operations. So I was kind of senior manager in that kind of environment, and really supporting a very large sales force in financial services in the UK. But yeah, with it just came so much work. And I was actually in compliance. So anyone who's ever worked in compliance, I was caught between a rock and a hard place. It wasn't the most inspiring job because we had our main compliance department above me monitoring everything I did. And I was trying to keep the sales force in line So you can imagine they really loved me coming in and saying, you're not doing that right, you need to comply with policy. Kind of what Facebook does to me now with ads. But and then I had, you could never please the compliance department and never please the sales force. It was soul destroying a lot of the time, and it really got me down, I have to say, and that compounded the stress. So yeah, enough was enough and left. So
yes, and so I should also say people might notice your accent, so they
yes.
might wonder, I don't think she lives in, well, you live in across the pond, and most of your work though is in the US, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of my clients, my Facebook ads management clients, are in the US. In fact, I've only just taken my very first UK-based client for that. It's crazy. So I do spend quite a bit of time over, obviously before the C word happened. But when I'm over in the US, a lot of people just assume that I live over there. But I am a Scot, born and bred in Scotland, and still live here as well. So just near Glasgow.
Yeah. So why did you just did you go to college and get a degree like we do here, and then just went on the career path and just,
I
yeah.
did, and interestingly enough, that's almost, I had, my going into corporate was my second pivot in my life, really, because I left school and I did the kind of usual teenage jobs of waitressing and servicing like that. Absolutely, I think we all do, don't we? Just to
Yes.
get some
Yes, I
extra
was a
money.
waitress. Yes.
Yeah,
Everybody
and
needs to be a waitress, I think.
oh,
Don't you?
100%.
Yes.
I loved it. I mean, I'm quite an extrovert, and I just loved chatting to everyone and giving them a good customer experience. And I think, to be honest, that's carried with me all through my life. But I went into hotel management. So I did a degree in hotel management. It was a kind of business degree essentially, and I loved that too. And then got into hotel management and was a hotel manager, and then kind of decided, well, I love this, but it doesn't pay that well. And
Right.
yeah, there's kind of that balance. So I decided at that point to pivot, and that's at that point I got into financial services, and then, as I say, had 15 years that. So that was kind of my first pivot and
Yeah.
reinventing myself. And then the second one came in leaving corporate and going, oh, what the heck do I do now? Because I
Yeah.
still need to earn money. I still need to, support myself and my family. I've got my husband, but we couldn't live on just what he was earning alone. So it was right, okay, what am I going to do now? And kind of had to
Did you
look
guys
at.
meet at work? That was like love
No,
stories.
we
Did you meet at
didn't.
work?
We didn't actually. Interestingly enough, we met at my cousin's wedding, and I had never met my husband before, but he was a very good friend of my cousin's, and had known him all his life. And went to the wedding, and there was a little bit of kind of arranging went on. So my husband to be was sat at the table opposite me, and obviously there was a lot of good matchmaking went on because we did hit it off, and that was it. The rest is history, as they say.
How fun.
So, yeah, but yeah, it was later in life. 35, it's not that late. When you look back on it, you think, well, that's not that late in life, but I think a lot of people would view it that way. But it does mean that I was in a position of wanting to start a family, and I definitely was an older mum, and there's a lot of that. You've kind of got to adapt. Is this going to happen? And
Did it take you a while since you waited? Did it take you a while to get pregnant? Yeah.
It did, and we went on quite a journey to have children. So we did have to go through infertility treatment, lots of things, and we were blessed. We did finally, have my son. But even the medical profession label you as I think on my notes, I was a geriatric mum because I was over 40 having my child, and then you know yourself, and you're inside, you're like, I still feel like I'm 25, and a lot of the time I still behave like I'm 25, but because the body's not that physical age, you just get labeled. And
yeah, in the US, because my oldest daughter just had her fourth, and she was
wow.
over 35, and you're a geriatric maternity patient if you're 36 or older. So yeah,
Yeah,
crazy.
and even for funding for infertility treatment and IVF, things like that, they do remove funding from sort of 36, 37 here as well. So we were kind of in the situation that, you got to self-fund, and, as a lot of you would have to do as well.
Mm.
But
It's like your fault for waiting so long, huh? Is like that how they treat
absolutely.
you?
It
Wow.
is a little bit like that. It's almost kind of like, why didn't you do this sooner? And well, I would have loved to, but it just didn't happen that way. So I just don't. There's quite a lot of stigma attached to doing things like that, and you've kind of got to just say, right, no, this is what I want, and this is what I'm getting on with, and go for it. So I think, yeah, a lot of pivots, a lot of changes have come in later life, and I think, I just think nobody should stop themselves just because they're getting older. They shouldn't write themselves off. If you want something bad enough, you just go for it.
Did you stay home with him when he was first born? Did you make the decision to leave?
I
And
did.
yeah, okay.
I did, Laurie, and that was, to be honest, another thing, a driver for what I did next as far as kind of entrepreneurship was concerned and running my own business, because I vowed to myself, because of the journey we'd gone through and how difficult it was to have a child, I said, there's no way I'm not going to be there for him. I want to be at home when he's little. I want to have that time with him. I'm not going to just have gone through all this to put him into childcare. And I'm not in any way decrying that there's anything wrong with that, because I think we all have got to do what we've got to do. But that was my personal choice, that no, I wanted to be with him, and I was going to do whatever it took to do that, including setting up my own business that, you could work around that, or so you think. Because
Yeah.
that's the dream that's portrayed, isn't it? That I just need to go online and I can sit at home with my baby and it'll all be lovely, and, it'll all fit around each other. And the truth could not be more, further
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah. It is really a 24-hour day job in the beginning. It's funny because I had kids very young. So I was 23 when I had my first, but I wasn't making a lot of money, and I was working as a receptionist, and I just transferred to a new position, and I found out I was pregnant. So the whole time I had that new position, I was kind of dealing with morning sickness and then pregnancy. So when it came to the day where I had to and I only had 5 weeks off, and I took the baby
Wow.
to the babysitter, I was like, that broke my heart. And so I decided in that moment to not bring the baby back again. And I went and
Mm-hmm.
quit my job. Well, I did ask if I could go part-time, and they said no. So I quit my job. And that was, to me, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, but I just realized that's almost an entrepreneur thing, because I was like, I'll watch children. I'll
Yeah.
babysit. And I made as much money doing that and it allowed me to stay home with my kids. Back then they didn't have the internet. Maybe I would have chosen a different, profession, because childcare is not my number one, favorite thing to do. But yeah, so that is a big driving force, I think, with mothers and does cause us to pivot into something different.
Absolutely. And when I did leave corporate, because I wasn't quite yet pregnant, so my first business was actually dog walking. I had a dog walking and pet care business. So
That's
completely
awesome.
different. Anyone that
Wow.
knows me, I absolutely adore dogs. And yeah, I was surrounded by dogs every day, out in the outdoors, walking, doing all the things that I loved. And then I got pregnant and I thought, this isn't going to work, walking, 5 hours a day, heavily pregnant. So it was a kind of, I think, 2010, I decided I needed to find something different. And that was what led me into social media marketing and really
And
getting
how did
stuck.
you get into Facebook ads? Because honestly, you are a, I don't know how to describe it. A rock star is like probably the best way to describe it. And when I think of you and the past, that, I would think, oh, maybe it was an accountant, somebody who did like work numbers, because the numbers, but then you have this coaching piece too.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you really work your magic is by teaching people how to do their own ads. And so you have this capability to be this kind of empathetic guide, as well as knowing all the ins and outs. I mean, you had process stuff, and there is a lot of process with ads, I guess.
Yeah.
But how did you fall? I guess, was it just something that you liked, that you figured out
No,
on your own, and then you liked? No,
no.
okay. So how did you get into it?
I hated Facebook ads. I'll be quite honest. There are days when I still do. No, when I started out as a kind of social media consultant, that came about because when I was in corporate, I actually had a little kind of part-time business it was really just a hobby. It was taking Belgian chocolate bars and creating wedding favors out of them. So I would personalize the wrappers around these delicious bars of chocolate that I would store in the house. The smell in my home at that time was amazing. And I'd put the wrappers around them and I'd, personalize them with maybe little trimmings of ribbon that matched bridesmaids' dresses, things like that. And brides could not get enough of them. And I started telling people on Facebook, and this is where you just sound like an old fogey, because Facebook was only just coming through at that point. It was only just starting, and folk were starting to kind of chat on it. And I was telling my friends what I was doing, and they were like, "Oh, I've got someone I know who's getting married," because it was at that kind of age of life. They'll be interested. I thought, great. And I was making sales just by telling people on Facebook what I was doing. So it was almost like a light bulb moment for me when I had to give up the dog walking business. It just all coincided that an entrepreneur here in the UK was setting up an opportunity where you could almost buy a business in a box, and it was teaching you how to do social media, not just Facebook, but Twitter and other social media networks, but to help businesses use them. And I thought, do you know what? I kind of know how to do this with Facebook. I'd love to learn the rest, but Facebook was definitely my first love. So that's where I started, was really doing that for years. And I think a lot of that played into, hotel management, all that, the hospitality industry, loving talking to people. Facebook's a natural place for that. So I'm just a gab. I love being on and doing that. But then Facebook advertising started to take off. And I thought, if I want to be at the forefront of being a Facebook marketer, I need to learn Facebook advertising. And as I say, I absolutely hated it. I could not get my head around it. And I think that's why I now can relate to people trying to tackle it and to learn it. It's not the easiest thing. But if you simplify it and put processes around it that are clear, that people can follow, magical things happen. And I see it with my students all the time. They suddenly get what they need to do, and they're off and running. And I love that. I love that part of it, and coaching in it. So that's how I kind of got into Facebook advertising, was just sheer stubbornness, I think, Laurie, about I'm going to learn this, even though I hate it and I don't really like it. I'm going to learn it. And the more I got into it and better I became, I started getting people saying, "Look, would you run my ads for me?" And I was like, no. I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be doing this. But eventually I thought, no, there's only so long I can push this off. And when I started doing it all the time and niched down to just do that and specialize in that, that's when my business exploded. Absolutely exploded. So I would always say to someone who, if you are starting out in your business, get as niche as you can, or niche, because the more you can talk specifically to one type of person who needs your help, the clearer you are, and the more possibilities there are than trying to be everything to everyone.
Right. Yeah. And Liz works on multi-million-dollar campaigns. So, I mean, it's crazy what you do in the world and how you serve at a very high level. And then you also, through James Wedmore's program, you help his students also, which is how I met you, which is really great. But you also have your own course, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah, okay. I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm coaching for James, and I'm very fortunate to have him as a client. I love working with him and some other, big names in the online space as well. So, and I love that. But if I was to look back, and if you told me even 3 years ago that I would be running multi-million-dollar ad campaigns, I would have laughed in your face. I absolutely would have gone, no. Nobody's going to want me working with millennials and doing all this stuff. But here I am, and I love it. I've got some amazing clients who, I think it's when you see the ads that we run that bring people into their world, that they can then serve and help and create transformation. That's what does it for me. That's my reward. I think just seeing the difference they make in the world is incredible. So to coach some of their students, I love doing that, because it's back to the kind of social aspect, connection, and just making a difference. So I love that part. I'm doing that for my own students in Ads on Fire as well.
Yeah. So how much time, because you do 3 things is what I'm hearing. So you have your own students with your own program, you support these multi-million-dollar campaigns, and you also provide coaching services, specialty kind of focus on ads. So how much percentage, do you have a favorite, or do you like doing all three? And what I think that tells people is that you don't have to just do one thing. You can take
No.
your expertise and you can do many things.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean I've done a lot of personality profiles over the years, and I'm always come out that I'm an extrovert, not a strong extrovert, but kind of extroverted. So I do get my energy from talking to other people. So for me, whilst I would say my main part of my business is the Facebook ads management and working with 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs, it really, that takes up most of my time. But that's almost me sitting behind the desktop and doing the ads management and looking at the numbers and doing that, and there's no interaction. So this is where I love the coaching element and having that as part of my business, because that feeds my joy for talking to people and having that interaction. But it also helps me almost a balance for me, because I'm learning and honing my craft while I'm managing other people's ads. And for me, that always keeps me my feet to the fire about learning new things and always having to stay ahead of latest what's happening on Facebook. But then I can go and teach that to my students, or to my coaching client students. So I love that kind of balance that I've got in the business right now.
Do you teach people also not just to do their own ads, but how to become like a Facebook ads manager? Because I
I
think there's
don't.
like probably a heavy, yeah.
Yeah, people have asked me, would I? And I haven't, probably out of respect for a lady that I worked with who helped me enormously with the ads management side of the business, the kind of business side of that. So not so much the running of the ads, but the actual, how do you turn that into a business and how do you really, grow that? So she does do that. She does train potential ad managers, and I think I've always said, sort of step back from wanting to do that, but never say never, because I think there's a lot of people who do say to me, I'd love to know how to do it and actually run a business, and why not?
Yeah, and I think the customer base is there. There's plenty to go around, but I do appreciate how, you're conscious of that. That's nice. So you have a son now. So I want to talk about timeline, because I always like people to share their age, although I don't force it on them. So from our pre-interview, you said that you made this big pivot at 42 when you had your son.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's 10 now?
He's 8. So I should do
He's
working
8.
next. Yeah. So yeah, just the way the years worked and what time of year.
Oh,
So
yeah. So you were with
I'm
him for a
51
bit. Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was 42 when I gave birth to him, and then turned 43 very soon after that. So
Okay.
yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
And now you're 52. You were open with that, right?
51,
Talk about.
yes.
Oh,
50.
51. You're 51.
I'm hanging on to that, just that 1 year, Laurie.
People always add up,
I know.
Everybody I talk
No,
to, they say, I'm going to be X. And I'm like, no, appreciate your age now. So,
I
okay.
know.
So,
No,
yeah.
I'm in my golden 50s, and it's hilarious because I remember turning 30, and that I felt that was the end of the world. I think I was depressed when I turned 30, and now I look back and think, what the heck was I worried about then?
I think 30 was my hardest year too.
40 was nowhere near as bad.
Yeah, 50 was like my best year because I got remarried to my soulmate. So yeah, that's the best year, right? When you get to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how's your son? I mean, what's he do with his mom being a Facebook ads expert? Is he allowed to get on the internet at all?
Well, funnily enough, because I do let him. I kind of let him watch over my shoulder, because my style of parenting is that if I make it forbidden fruit that he's not to go on there, that's when he's going to want to do it all the more. And I also took the decision that at some point he's going to want to get onto social media, so he may as well watch me and how to use it responsibly. That there's none of that kind of hang-ups about self-image and anything like that. So I've been very careful to sort of help him navigate at a very early age, I guess, what's out there, because I think it's inevitable that's where he's going to live his life. So and he's not bothered. He's very nonplussed by it all. It's kind of, whatever, Facebook, I'm not interested. Of course, he's too young. I mean, I'm sure that'll change. There'll be TikTok or whatever else is the thing when he's a little bit older. But he's a pretty cool kid. He's very sure of himself, but not in a cocky way. He's pretty yeah, he's just grounded. And I actually learn a lot from him and his approach to life about not
Yeah,
sweating small stuff.
that's awesome. Now, do you work US hours? How do you work your schedule?
Oh, that's a great question. My answer would be no. I work UK time, but it quite often morphs into US time. So a lot of my clients are on the Pacific coast. So what tends to happen, so there's an 8 hour time difference, we're 8 hours ahead, but it tends to work really nicely. So quite often I just, wake up, son jumps into bed with me, I'll have a cup of coffee, open up the laptop and catch up on what's happening with ads. And that allows me to kind of almost set things up for the rest of the day that my clients are asleep. So I'm almost getting things sorted for them while they're blissfully unaware. And then by the time they come online later on in my day, we can have a quick catch up and chat. And then I can have some downtime, but I'll quite often then just take some time out during the day when I'm not working and then do a little bit more at night in my evening time, which is when kind of their main part of the day. So it works quite nicely. I think it's just about being flexible and working at a time that suits me, but also, I'm supporting my clients when they need me.
Yeah. When you transitioned, because what I try to do with my podcast is inspire people to see examples that
Mm-hmm.
people can do something completely different at any time in their life. So, what was it, just curiosity that led you? Was it, sometimes I think people are led to do something different because we had a lot of layoffs
Yeah,
stories where
yeah.
people, it's almost like the worst thing in the world happened to them, but then something good came out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You were more put in this position as becoming a mother and choosing to do something differently. So, did you have any fear going into it that you didn't know that you would be okay, or that you didn't know enough? Did you have any of those
Well,
fears that a lot of people have?
I mean, totally, Laurie. I think at the point when I left corporate, I was still 18 months away from becoming pregnant. But it was me choosing at that point and realizing that if I didn't stop, the burnout and the stress health wise, I was probably never going to conceive. So it was taking a huge gamble because I was burning my boats. I was saying I want out and I'm leaving this career that had been very successful up to that point, nice salary, company car. And I was saying, I'm going to put all this on the line in the hope that I am going to become pregnant. And we already knew at that point that we were having issues with that and there was going to be a long journey ahead of us. And there was no guarantee that was going to work. So I could have been giving it all up and
Were
ending
you
up not.
undergoing infertility treatments then?
We were just about to start as I left corporate. So it was divine timing almost that I then could go through that journey without the stress of working in corporate, but there was still the stress of having to bring in money. There was still the stress of what am I going to do, and it might not have worked out, but I think I just had this knowing that I was going to follow that path and I was going to pursue every single angle and do whatever it took and whatever I could to be a mum. And that drove me forward. And it was almost like that was my shining light, that it was, okay, well, what can I do to support myself and my husband while we go on this journey? And yeah, it just happened to lead me into social media, which I loved. But I mean, I had no knowledge of the internet. I had no knowledge of tech. I had no knowledge of what I was really getting into. I had no knowledge of running my own business other than what I'd seen that I'd done in corporate. But when you're in corporate, you're only a small part of it. You've got a marketing department behind you and you can maybe see what they do, but you're not having to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And when suddenly you are the marketing department, you are the accounts department, and you are the sales department, and you're everything, that's a big, steep learning curve. And I think that's probably what puts a lot of people off, especially if you're a little bit later in life. That can be quite daunting because you are kind of looking at all the kind of new kids on the block who just seem to take to it like a duck to water. Mm-hmm. It's like they're born with internet in their system and they just intuitively know what to do. I had none of that. But I think you should never let that stop you. Old dogs can learn new tricks. We absolutely can. And I think in some respects, maturity brings with it resilience, and a heck of a lot of experience that we forget we've got, that we can apply and we can learn.
What kept driving you? Was it your desire to stay home with your son? Because a lot of people just throw their hands up and then they'll just go back to the job, the job that was paying the
Yeah,
bills.
and don't get me wrong, there were times when I thought that, because, you know, I'd be tired, I'd be feeding, I'd be trying to run a business, trying to keep it going. So I'd kind of started my social media business just before I became pregnant. And then I realized that, and you kind of naively think, I can keep this going, it'll be fine, because I'm going to be online. And but you suddenly realize that you're disconnected from the networking you've been doing. You no longer get to meetings, couldn't go to breakfast networking, I couldn't do any of that. And it was like, well, how the heck do I show up? How do I get seen? And, you know, there were times when I was barely earning enough to pay my side of the bills, and thought maybe it wouldn't be nice to just know money was coming in every month. And at one point I did actually, I think when my son was about 18 months old, I did take a part-time job with the thought that I would still keep the business running part-time while I worked this part-time. And that's just fool's strategy, because you've got one foot in both camps and you're not master of either of them. So that just wasn't sustainable. So again, even doing that, I had to make the decision that, Liz, are you going to go all in on this, on your own business? Or are you going to be an employee? Which is it? Because you can't do both. And that was a defining point for me as well, to say, okay, it was almost again burning the bridges, right? Leave the part-time job and we'll go on all in on this. And it was really to make sure that I was, you know, I could give my son the life I wanted him to have and the opportunities I wanted him to have, and that I wasn't having to go cap in hand to my husband all the time to get it. So I think, yes, my son was a driving influence, but there was also me. There was also my own self-confidence to be independent, be self-sufficient, and not have to just be financially completely dependent on my husband.
I love that you shared the struggle, because sometimes when we tell these stories, everything seems so like smooth and upward motion on the graph. And so it's really good to hear that and know that you just keep driving to that end goal that you want. What would you say sparks you? Because I'm real into second half of life sparking, finding that spark and getting that. A lot of people, you know, the passion's gone once their kids leave. And so they're like, okay, I committed 25 years to them. And now what? And so you're a little bit different because you're an older mom. So what is it that I think sometimes to drive us to, we do need that spark. So what would you say is your spark?
Yeah, it's a great question, because even though I'm an older mum and he's only 8, he's still at that stage of life now where he'll go out and he'll play with his friends and I maybe don't see him for the whole day. So you are left with that, okay, it's just me now. What you know, who am I now? I'm not necessarily a full-time mum all the time. And I would say I did have a real loss of self-identity for a little while about, you know, who am I if I'm not just being full-time mum? And for me, my spark now is regaining me back, the person who was independent, and even before I met my husband, you know, the things that I used to do, and doing these again. For me, it's getting outdoors, it's being on the water, it's paddleboarding. And
yeah, I see those pictures of you on
Facebook. I love it. And
like,
I'm so blessed. I live right on a Scottish loch. The mountains are around me. It sounds like, you know, there's going to be haggis coming out of the mountains any moment now. But
is that where the Loch Ness Monster lives?
I know, I
Is
love
that where he comes from?
I certainly hope not. I hope I never see him when I'm out there on the paddleboard. And so yeah, that's a bit further north, but lots of water around me. So I love getting out on that. And I think it was a realization for me that I wanted the kind of lifestyle, I wanted my business to support the kind of lifestyle that lights me up, which is having that freedom that if it's a lovely day out there, that I don't have to go, oh, I have to work. I've got the team in place that I can say, right, I'm going out there for a couple of hours and I'm doing that, because that re-energizes me. It lights me up. It's what I love to do. So that really is my spark now, Laurie. It's about what I get out of life, because I think, you know, there's fewer years now left than there was. I'm damned if I'm going to spend it working all the time.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny though. I say this because I was so desperate to get out of my corporate job, and retirement was to me something just as an escape. And
Mm-hmm.
now I love what I do so much. I can't see. I mean, I want the freedom, and I do have the freedom. Like I was talking to my best friend from college today, and I was like, "Hey, she just moved to a house on the water, and they got a boat." And she's like, "Oh, come on down. It's a couple hours away." And we were looking at weekends, and I was like, "Well, we don't have to come on a weekend. We can come any day. Which day do you want?" And so,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that freedom is great, but I can't imagine stopping what I do now.
No. And
Yeah.
people ask me that, is it when will you retire? How? Yeah, oh, I haven't really thought about that because, I could just keep going forever if I want to.
Yeah.
So, and I can't imagine not doing something for me like this. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. So, what wise words do you have for the midlife person who is listening and feeling stuck and yearning for more freedom, and is afraid to step out there?
I think it's find whatever it is that can drive you. What is it that you really want to hang on to, that you don't want to give up, and that you can just grip onto, and it'll keep you moving forward. And just believe in yourself, because, as I say, I'd be the first to say it's not been all roses and amazing times in trying to be an entrepreneur and build a business. It absolutely hasn't, especially trying to juggle being a mum and everything like that. But it's so worth it to go through all that, as long as you are just keeping focused on what it is you want out of life. And don't let anyone tell you that you're too old to do something. Don't let anyone tell you that you're too old to learn something new. And don't tell yourself that either, because tech isn't scary when you learn it. If you get a good teacher, you'll learn it. We're all capable of it. We just choose to tell ourselves that we're not techie. And it is a choice to tell yourself that. I firmly believe that. So choose to tell yourself something different. Choose to tell yourself that you can do it, because you can, and just go for it.
Yeah. Or find a mentor who believes in what you don't believe in. And
Absolutely.
yeah, that's what I feel like. As an extrovert, I'm curious. This is a difficult situation we're in because we don't have that contact. I'm an extrovert too.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a virtual community that I am able to connect with. And so thank God for that. A lot of people haven't even used Zoom until now. So that's kind of fun that they're now experiencing that, and it's making it easier for us to connect. So what did you have that? Because you're involved in an amazing coaching community right now. And I think that, when did that come into your life? Did you have that to lean on back in the day?
Um, I guess I can't. I'm part of a mastermind, so, and that they're an amazing group of people. So they're there. Been an interesting thing during lockdown as an extrovert, as you say, because I think it's almost made it worse, because yes, you can connect online, but for me, that's not the same. It's for me, I draw my energy about just going to see my best mates and having a right good chat, and setting the world to rights. And I haven't been able to do that. And yes, you can maybe jump on Zoom and FaceTime or whatever. It's not felt quite the same. So there has been an element missing, and I think it has almost been feeling like a little bit of pressure cooker, because it's the same faces you've seen every single day. And much as I might love my husband and my son, I have absolutely been craving getting out and seeing friends again. So to start coming out of lockdown has been amazing for that. I think,
Yeah,
yes,
I'm a big hugger too. Are you a hugger? Hug a
yeah,
lot. It's really
absolutely.
weird. It's like people come, like we see people that we haven't seen for a while, and they're like, they do the elbow bump. I'm like, no,
I
I
know.
just want to hug you.
And I'm also one of these people who I always smile at strangers. Anyone I pass in a shop, I'll smile at them. And of course, I've got this face mask on. I think, Liz, they have no idea you're smiling at them. They probably just think you're some kind of crazy lady walking past who's got a
You're
grimace on
wrinkled
her face.
out. They see your like little
You do.
squinty
You
eyes.
start overemphasizing it to make sure your eyes are crinkling. Yeah, I'm
Uh,
smiling at you. It's
yeah.
crazy. I'm an expert. I need to talk to someone.
Yeah, I was doing a course. I think it was a free thing I did, and one of the things was smile and go smile at every random stranger you do, like gift them a smile. And somebody in the group did it, and she came back and she goes, I smiled, but she said that I needed my teeth worked on.
Thank you.
But I think it's, I love smiling. I agree with you. I think it's a gift to a stranger. So anyways, thank you so much for being here. It's been a delight. I love always seeing you and having a chance to talk to you. So I feel a little like I got you to myself today. I didn't have
Yeah,
to
it's
share
been
it with
amazing to see
anybody.
you again,
Yeah.
Laurie. Thank you so much.
All right. And we'll put in the show notes how to reach out to you, because she's an amazing Facebook ads teacher. And if you are struggling with Facebook ads and need some help, Liz is your gal. All right.
Thanks, Laurie.
Uh-huh. Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraverage.grandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own, not your average life.